Amy steps into the barn just like she always does, calm, strong, and in control. But this time, something is different. The horses are quiet. Spartan doesn't run to her. Instead, he stands still, and someone is holding his reins. Amy freezes. The camera slowly turns, revealing a face that fans haven't seen in years. Her eyes widen. Her heart skips a beat, and all the calm in her life suddenly begins to crack. It's not a dream. It's not a memory. Someone from the past has returned to Heartland, and they didn't come back just to say hello. Amy had gotten used to quiet mornings. She would walk out to the barn before sunrise, let the horses out, and breathe in the smell of hay and earth. Since Ty's passing, those simple moments gave her peace. But on this day, that peace was gone the moment she stepped through the barn door. A shadow moved near Spartan. Amy's instincts kicked in. Was it an intruder? She reached for the nearest tool. But then, the figure turned. It was a man, tall, older than before. But Amy knew that face. It was Ty's father, Brad Borden. Amy hadn't seen him in years. Not since the funeral. Not since he stood in the back and left without saying a word. Now here he was, stroking Spartan's mane like nothing had happened. He still remembers me, Brad said quietly, not even surprised to see Amy standing there. Amy didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened. So many emotions rushed in. Anger, sadness, confusion. Brad had never been a good father to Ty, but he was still part of the past Amy had tried to heal from. She asked him why he came back. Brad said he had been sober for 3 years and wanted to make peace. He said he was traveling through and felt drawn to Heartland, like something told him to come. Amy didn't know what to believe. She wanted to scream, to throw him out. But something about the way he looked tired, honest, maybe even broken, made her pause. Jack heard voices and came in. When he saw Brad, his whole body tensed. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here," Jack said, his voice low and sharp. Brad didn't argue. He simply said, "I know, but I had to see him one more time." That night, Amy couldn't sleep. She sat with Ty's old photo in her hands, thinking about the letter Brad had given her before he left. He said Ty wrote it as a young man but never sent it. "Maybe it's time you read it," Brad said. "Maybe it'll help you understand." Amy sat on the porch, alone under the stars. She didn't open the letter. Not yet. She wasn't ready. But something inside her was shifting. Something deep. The past was not as finished as she thought. And now, the old wounds were opening again. But Amy wasn't the only one who noticed the storm coming. Jack stayed up late too, pacing the living room. He remembered how much pain Brad had caused in the past. He didn't want Amy to go through that again. But he also saw something different in Brad's eyes. Regret, maybe. Or something even deeper. Time had changed them all, but pain had its own clock. And tonight, it was ticking loud. As dawn broke, Amy finally opened the letter. Her hands shook. One sentence at the top made her freeze. "If you're reading this, I didn't get the chance to say goodbye." Dinner started off normal, with Katie talking about school and Tim bragging about his new horse deal. Amy was quiet, still carrying the weight of the letter from Ty. But then Lou cleared her throat and asked for everyone's attention. The room went still. She looked at Peter, then at her daughters, and finally at Jack. Then she said it. "I've been offered a leadership role in New York," Lou began. "It's huge, something I've worked toward for years. And I'm thinking of taking it." The reaction was instant. Georgie looked up, her fork halfway to her mouth. "You're leaving again?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. Lou tried to explain it was only temporary, just 6 months. But that didn't calm anyone. Katie pushed back from the table and left without a word. Tim slammed his hand on the table. 6 months? Lou, you just got back into their lives properly. You can't keep running off every time something big calls your name. Lou stood her ground, but the hurt on her face was clear. "This isn't about running," she said. "It's about who I am. I've always had dreams too. I can't keep ignoring them." Amy tried to stay quiet, but her voice finally broke through the noise. "What about Heartland?" she asked. "What about the girls? What about everything you worked to rebuild here?" Peter stepped in to defend Lou, but even he looked unsure. "We can make it work," he said. "We've done it before." But Jack had heard enough. He pushed his chair back and walked to the window. staring into the dark night. Family doesn't always get second chances, he said softly. Not everyone comes back. That night, the tension didn't fade. Georgie stayed in the loft and didn't speak to anyone. Katie locked herself in her room. Tim rode off on his horse to clear his head. Amy tried to speak to Lou, but it turned into a quiet argument, two sisters with different dreams pulling in opposite directions. The next morning, Jack went to check the fences, but it was more than that. He needed to be alone. He'd seen too many people walk away from Heartland, thinking they could come back later like nothing changed. But something always changed. And now, Lou's choice was threatening to break the fragile balance they had just started to rebuild. Meanwhile, Lou sat outside with her phone in hand, staring at the job offer again. It was everything she ever wanted, but it had a price and she wasn't sure if she could pay it without losing something far more important. The sun rose, but it didn't bring peace. It brought a question that hung over Heartland like morning mist. If Lou leaves, will the rest of the family still hold together? Early one morning, Parker was out in the fields filming a short vlog for her environmental club. She was talking about ranch sustainability when something strange caught her eye in the sky. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't a plane. It hovered, dipped low, then flew quickly away. It was a drone and it wasn't hers. At first, she thought it might belong to a neighbor or someone filming wildlife. But when she checked the footage on her camera later, her gut told her this was different. The drone wasn't watching the land. It was watching the people, Parker told Jack, but he brushed it off as kids playing around. Amy wasn't so sure. Things around Heartland had felt strange lately. Doors unlocked, tools moved from where they were left, horses acting nervous for no reason. She wondered if someone was snooping around or maybe worse. Lou didn't want to hear about it. With her job offer on her mind, she was already distracted. But Caleb decided to take it seriously. He used to work security in the past and still had contacts in the sheriff's department. He promised to look into it. Meanwhile, Georgie's training was suffering. She couldn't focus. Her coach even paused a session after Georgie looked over her shoulder for the third time that day. Georgie confessed that she felt like someone was following her, watching her from a distance. At first, it sounded like anxiety, maybe stress from Lou's possible move, but the feeling didn't go away. Later that week, Caleb found something behind the stables, a small black device, almost hidden in the dirt. It was a wireless camera, broken now, but clearly planted to record. The whole family was shaken. Someone had been watching them. Amy immediately thought of Ty's letter again. Could it be connected? Brad's visit? Or something more current? Jack called a family meeting. He didn't want fear spreading across Heartland, but he knew they had to be careful. No one had seen anything, and there were no tracks or tire marks. Whoever this was, they were smart. Lou wanted to bring in the authorities, but Tim disagreed. This is our land, he said. We protect our own. The next evening, Parker received a message from an unknown account. It was a video clip clearly taken by the same drone. In the video, Amy was in the barn reading Ty's letter. It was private, intimate, and now someone had sent it directly to Parker's phone like a threat. Amy was devastated. That moment was sacred to her, something she hadn't even shared with Lou or Jack. Whoever recorded it knew where to look and when. They weren't just spying, they were targeting emotions. Caleb's contacts confirmed the drone model was military grade, not something found in a toy store. That ruled out local teenagers. Whoever it was had resources. But why spy on Heartland? Was it just a ranch? Or was someone after something or someone specific? As the family locked down the property, blocked off trails, and upgraded the barn security, Amy couldn't shake the feeling that Ty's name still had something to do with all of this. And now, with Brad back in the picture, secrets were starting to rise like dust in the wind. Some things at Heartland had always been private, but now, the walls were no longer enough. Dot in the distance. As the sun went down, another drone light blinked once, then vanished behind the trees. This time, no one saw it, but the watchers were still out there. Amy had walked past that old leather jacket dozens of times. It had hung quietly in the far corner of the tack room, a memory stitched into the fabric. She wasn't sure what made her stop this time. Maybe it was Spartan brushing against the door. Maybe it was the scent of the barn, or the ache in her chest after seeing Brad again. Whatever it was, her hand reached out and touched Ty's jacket like it was a living thing. And then she felt something, folded deep inside one of the pockets. Was a piece of paper. She pulled it out with slow hands. It was yellowed, soft at the edges, clearly old. Her fingers unfolded it carefully, and there it was. Ty's handwriting. The ink was faded, but his voice jumped off the page. It wasn't just a note. It was a letter, and it had never been read before. Amy sat down, breath caught in her throat. The words were simple but heavy. Ty had written it for Lindy, back before she was even born, just in case something ever happened. He talked about love, about life, about what it means to care for animals, and about staying brave even when things hurt. But what stopped Amy cold was the last part of the letter. Ty mentioned something he'd never said aloud, a dream he had. A dream of leaving Heartland, just for a little while, to see the world with Amy and their daughter. Something he never got to do. Amy clutched the letter to her chest and cried, not out of pain, but something deeper. The realization that Ty had carried a hope he never shared. A dream they both secretly had, but never acted on. She wasn't angry. She was overwhelmed. It felt like Ty had reached her time to speak to her now, exactly when she needed it most. Later, Amy sat with Lindy by the fire. The little girl was drawing horses, just like her dad used to. Amy gently began to read parts of the letter to her. Lindy didn't understand every word, but her eyes lit up when Amy said, "Daddy said he loved you before you were even born." The next day, Amy showed the letter to Jack. He held it in silence for a long time. He was always thinking ahead. Jack finally said, even when he didn't say it out loud. Then Jack folded it and gave it back to Amy. "Keep it close. You'll know when it's time to let her read the whole thing." But not everyone saw the letter the same way. When Brad heard about it, his face changed. His voice turned sharp. "He never gave that to you?" he asked. "I thought he did." That small sentence raised more questions. Why would Brad think Ty had already given it to Amy? Was there more? Did Brad know something else Ty had kept hidden? Amy wasn't sure what to think anymore. She trusted Ty with her life. But this letter proved that even the strongest bonds could have secrets. Maybe not harmful ones, but unfinished pieces, words left unsaid. That night, Amy placed the letter in a box along with Ty's old wristwatch and a photo of him holding baby Lindy. She closed the lid gently. Heartland wasn't just a ranch. It was a place where past and present collided. And now, with Brad back, with Lou's decision looming, and strangers spying on the family, Amy felt the weight of it all pressing down on her heart. Ty's ghost wasn't haunting her. He was guiding her. But where that path would lead next, even Amy didn't know. The rodeo grounds had always felt like Caleb's second home. The dust, the cheering, the smell of horses and sweat. It was where he found his purpose, where he proved himself. But on this particular afternoon, something felt off. There were no cheers, no music, just the echo of boots on gravel and a quiet tension in the air. Caleb was saddling a horse when he heard a soft voice behind him. "Caleb?" It was a name spoken gently to gently. He turned around slowly, and his world tilted. There she was, Marcy. Not a ghost, not a memory, but real, and standing right in front of him. Her dark hair was pulled back, her clothes dusty from travel, and in her arms was a little boy, blonde, maybe 3 years old. He wasn't crying. He was staring at Caleb with quiet curiosity, the same piercing blue eyes Caleb saw in the mirror every morning. "Why are you here?" Caleb asked, his voice flat. Marcy didn't smile. "I had nowhere else to go." It had been years. They'd known each other briefly during a rough chapter of Caleb's life back when things were wild and full of mistakes. He remembered her being strong, independent, and never asking for help. So why now? Jack was the first to spot the woman walking across the pasture later that day, the child on her hip. When he asked who she was, Caleb didn't answer. Not right away. But Jack knew something serious had dropped into their laps. At the dinner table, Marcy sat quietly while everyone else picked at their food. The little boy Tommy clung to her side. Lou offered a smile, but Amy kept watching Caleb. His hands were shaking slightly. He was somewhere between fear and guilt, and it showed. Later that night, Caleb finally told Amy the truth. I don't know if he's mine, he said, voice low. But I wouldn't be surprised. Marcy hadn't come to demand anything. No money, no name on a certificate. All she said was, he needs a place where he feels safe. And I trust you more than anyone. Amy wanted to believe her, but the timing was strange. With the drone incident still unsolved and tension already thick between Lou and the rest of the family, now there was a child added to the mix, one who could change Caleb's life forever. Tim didn't handle it well. You sure know how to pick your moments, he muttered to Caleb the next day in the barn. Caleb snapped back, defending himself. You think I planned this? You think I asked for a kid I didn't even know existed? The truth was, Caleb had always wanted a family of his own, but he never thought it would come crashing down like this. A child with his eyes, his stubborn face, but born from a time he barely remembered clearly. And now Marcy had handed him over, like the past had finally caught up. Amy tried to help, but even she was overwhelmed. The ranch already felt stretched thin, and as much as she cared for Caleb, she knew what it felt like to raise a child without answers. What made it harder was how quickly Lindy and Tommy bonded. They played together by the creek, giggling like old friends. It made Amy's heart ache. Children didn't know how to lie. They felt what was real, and Tommy seemed to feel like Heartland was home, but not everyone agreed. Rumors spread quickly through Hudson. Someone had seen Marcy arrive. Whispers grew in town. People started questioning Heartland again too. Much drama, too many secrets. Even the mayor's daughter might be leaving. Was the ranch really the same anymore? As night fell, Caleb stood at the edge of the pasture, watching the stars. Tommy came up beside him, holding his hand without a word. Caleb didn't move. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about broncs or bull riding. Nathan had always respected Amy's quiet strength. He never pushed, never rushed her healing, and never tried to take Ty's place. For 2 years, he simply stood beside her as a friend, a co-worker, and maybe something more. But now, he had made a choice. Whether she was ready or not, Nathan needed to know if their story had a future. He didn't take her to a fancy place or make a big scene. Instead, he chose the one spot she always returned to when things got hard, the ridge above the ranch. The same ridge where Ty had once stood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in warm gold and pale orange. Amy didn't suspect anything, not until she turned around and saw him standing there, holding a small box in his hand. He didn't kneel. He didn't give a speech. He simply opened the box and said, I know I can't replace what you lost. I never wanted to, but I'd like the chance to build something new. With you. And with Lindy. Amy didn't answer. Her breath caught. Her fingers curled into her sleeves. The air around them grew heavy. She looked at the ring, then at Nathan, kind, patient Nathan, and her heart split in two. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know if I'm ready. Nathan nodded. He didn't press, but his face fell slightly, just for a moment. You don't have to say anything now, he replied. I just needed you to know how I feel. Amy turned away. The sky was too beautiful to cry under, but her eyes stung anyway. So many pieces of her past were rising again. Ty's letter, Brad's return, Lou's decision, the spying, the child that might be Caleb's. And now this, a man offering her a second chance at love. Later that night, Amy sat beside Lindy as she slept. The little girl's arms were wrapped around her stuffed horse. In her sleep, she smiled, and out of nowhere she mumbled, I like Nathan. He's nice. Amy's hand froze. Lindy didn't know about the proposal, but somehow, she still knew what mattered. Amy stayed up until dawn, walking the fence line. Every post, every inch of the ranch reminded her of Ty, of their dreams, of their fights, of the life they built. But now she had to ask herself a hard question. Was she holding on to memories, or was she afraid to let go? The next morning, Tim noticed Nathan sitting alone by the barn. He said nothing at first, then finally asked, So, did she say yes? Nathan smiled sadly. Not yet. Tim didn't respond. He just gave Nathan a quiet nod, not approval, not agreement, just understanding. The kind only a man who'd made his own share of mistakes could offer. Meanwhile, Lou found Amy in the field. She didn't ask anything. She just stood there, beside her sister, the silence between them more powerful than any words. Lou had made her choice. She had sent in the acceptance email for the job. But Amy's choice was still hanging in the air. One choice could reshape a life. One word could reopen a heart. But Amy knew once spoken, it couldn't be taken back. And so, the ring stayed in Nathan's pocket. The answer stayed inside Amy's heart, for now. The sky turned black faster than anyone expected. The wind howled down from the hills, shaking the trees like angry hands. Tim was the first to spot the rising water in the west pasture. It had been raining for days, but no one thought the creek would flood. But now the banks had broken, and a muddy surge was crawling toward the barn. This wasn't just a storm, this was a test. Amy ran for the horses while Jack shouted orders, his voice firm but calm. Lou grabbed Lindy and Katie, pushing them toward the house. Caleb carried Tommy on his shoulders, slipping in the mud as he crossed the field. Marcy helped Georgie gather the loose hay bales to keep the animals warm once moved. Even Parker dropped her camera and joined in. No one sat back. No one waited to be asked. Fences fell. Tools washed away. But not a single soul left the others behind. Amy reached Spartan just in time. The old horse was panicked, but he calmed the moment she touched his neck. She led him out into the rising rain, soaking wet but focused. Nathan was there with ropes and tarps, already building a quick shelter near the hill. He didn't ask questions. He just worked beside her, like he always had. By the time the worst of the storm passed, they were exhausted, soaked to the bone, covered in mud, but safe. The house had power again. The barn held. The fences could be fixed. And not one person was missing. Later, as the family gathered near the fireplace, a quiet peace returned. Marcy sat with Tommy in her lap. Caleb sat beside them, no longer running from the truth. Jack poured a single glass of scotch and raised it silently, not for a toast, but for memory. Lou stood in the doorway, suitcase still in hand, unsure if she'd leave the next morning. After all, Amy was the last to enter. She held something in her hand, Ty's letter. She didn't say anything, but she placed it on the mantel. The message had been heard. The past had been honored. And now, she was ready to breathe again. Nathan sat quietly at the edge of the room, eyes on the fire. Amy walked to him, stopped, and simply took his hand. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Outside, the storm had left behind more than broken fences. It had left clean air, a sky full of stars, and a ranch that still stood stronger, weathered, but standing. Heartland had been bent, shaken, nearly broken, but not today. Not ever. They had faced the flood, the past, the fear, and the unknown. And they stood side by side, not because life was easy, but because family at its core is choosing to stay, especially when it's hard. As the fire crackled, Lindy whispered from the couch, "Daddy would be proud, right?" Amy looked at her daughter, then at everyone in the room. Old friends, new stories, healing hearts. "Yes," she said softly, "he would." And in that moment, the camera slowly pulled back from the house, glowing with warm light under the open, endless sky. Heartland was still home, and always would be.